And Chris came down, and his old college roommate, Brown, was down there. And he said, I've gotten a call from Word Records. They want to launch a contemporary label, and they want to launch it with 12 artists. They can't even find 12 artists. And then Chris goes, who's that? And he said, that's Amy Grant. And Chris said, let me call the record company. And he played that cassette over the phone. I was not a kid that sang into a hairbrush looking at myself in the mirror.
You didn't? How did you fall into it?
I've always loved music. And when my two oldest sisters came back from Boston, they went to school there. There was just like this Jesus hippie movement up there. I'm sure it was a combination of being stoned and praising God. Right. But they came back and started going to an old Church of Christ that had become spirit-filled and was everybody was blue jeans, barefoot, flowers in the hair, sitting in the window sills. And when I was lucky, I got to go with them. And that church also had a bookstore and a record store, and they just had live music on Saturday nights. So this was mid-70s. I loved that music, and all of that just felt, we would just sit cross-legged on the floor, and like the carpet on the floor, they were all carpet samples that were just like put together on a patchwork quilt, nothing fancy. Yeah. And that bookstore went through a couple of different configurations of getting bigger, but it was on Old 16th, 16th at Harpeth Hall Girls' School. Every week we had a mandatory chapel. It wasn't a Christian school. It's just part of, chapel program. And we were sitting in our assigned seat. And I just remember a minister was talking, and all I remember is how different it was from what felt like this vibrant experience that I was just beginning at the hippie church. And I kind of walked out and went and looked up and just said, man, you can use some PR down here.
I say that still.
Yes. So I went to the head of school. At the time, her name was Ida Nell McMurray. And I said, may I sign up to do a chapel program? And she said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm not sure yet, but it's going to be music. I had just started playing guitar. I had just written my first few songs, and I started writing for that chapel program. And after that chapel program, I just found a couple of notes stuck in my locker and my backpack. Hey, can we talk? And I would say, yeah, let's talk. And people just wanted to talk about their own faith journey. And, and I would just say, everybody's life is unique. I can tell you about my experience. And then I started getting invited to do other things. Hey, will you play guitar and sing while we're doing a double date? We're cooking these guys dinner. I mean, it was not even like, some things were really, I was so under the radar. And I never played out.
Wow.
But people would say, would you come? We're having a prayer breakfast. Will you come sing a few songs? But I was just in high school. And so a friend of mine who was one of the leaders of our youth group was taking some classes at Belmont College in studio something, because he had a job at a studio, but he was faking half of what he was doing. He said, I need to learn really what the control board does. Mm-hmm. So kind of show up and not be faking it at work. And he said, I've got some free time. Why don't you come record your songs? And I did. And he went back to his studio, and he was running off a tape copy. And the owner of the house that had the basement studio, feel free to edit all this out, but this is how weird it is.
No, this is fascinating.
So Chris was the owner of the house, and Chris came down, and his old college roommate, Brown, was down there, and he said,
is that Brown Bannister?
And he said,
that's so funny.
Oh my gosh, he said, I've gotten a call from Word Records. They're located in Waco, Texas. They want to launch a contemporary label, and they want to launch it with 12 artists. They can't even find 12 artists. And then Chris goes, who's that? And he said, that's Amy Grant. And Chris had been on a couple of dates with one of my older sisters. And Chris said, let me call the record company. And he played that cassette over the phone. And the guy said, she doesn't sound great, but she sounds sincere.
By the way, huge compliment in hindsight, but
No
at
kidding.
the time it probably wasn't.
So Brown calls me that night. He said, offer her a contract. Brown calls that night after 10 o'clock because this is kind of going on a while for them. And I'm 15. And he said, hey, Word Records is offering you a contract to make a record. And I think he's making fun of me because that's what 15-year-olds are, self-protecting and insecure. And he said, I mean it. Like they're sending somebody to town. It would be like if somebody had said, you are going to be on the next space shuttle. And then my dad picked up the phone and said, young lady, it's after phone curfew. And I was grounded. So in the same phone call, I was offered a record deal and grounded.
What did your parents think about did they think it was fake? Like, I just got offered a record deal.
No, I mean, that it was a one record deal with an option that we both had to agree to. And it came out, I worked on it slowly. Nobody was holding their breath. Writing, you know, and then it came out right around spring break of my senior year.
And Brown Bannister produced that? No?
Yes. And
he's friends with my brother. I don't know him, but I'm very aware of his careers.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that just continues. So that was that came out in the spring of 78. And then I just, all through college, I kept making music and singing, and it just.
I wonder did you play any of the Jesus festivals? Jesus 78, Jesus 79?
I did in Kissimmee, Florida.
Yes. Okay. I went to those. Like,
you might have been there.
I was like 10 years old.
I was an afternoon act.
And there was some great music. There was
you
what you were
camping
doing.
Did you camp or were they day trips?
I think we camped. I was little. So, I mean, the fact that my parents even allowed this, but there was a moment where if you titled Jesus on it, it was good. And then when like Res Band came out, that was a little too much. And we started getting even restricted. I'm like, oh my God, even Christian music isn't good enough for you. We had that secular Christian music fight. Like, there was some great music, and there was a strange hippie movement. The T-shirts that said "Keep on trusting" instead of "Keep on trucking." It's all the.
And honestly, my whole life, I have felt like I am a hard worker, and I do love music. But what I have felt like is a milkweed in the wind, and that I just will go, okay, here we go, okay, and then I'll land somewhere else, and then I'll land somewhere else.